Hey everyone. Uh, Something is gathering momentum in your life right now, not in the dramatic, visible way that tends to announce itself, but in the quieter, more consequential way that builds beneath the surface before it breaks through, the way a river runs deep and strong long before it reaches the place where it finally opens into something wider. And some of you, in the honest moments between the noise of daily life, may already be sensing it, a quality of readiness that wasn't there before. A sense that something is approaching the point where it becomes available, where the work and the growth and the choices that were made in less certain times begin to find their return. If this found you today, I think something in you already recognizes what this moment is about. A theme appearing strongly in this reflection is the energy of reciprocity, the deep, patient kind, not the transactional version that operates on a short timeline and a narrow ledger, but the kind that moves through a person's life across longer arcs, gathering what has been genuinely offered and eventually, in its own time, offering something back. There is a quiet intelligence to this kind of movement. It doesn't announce its arrival in advance. It simply appears when the conditions are right in the form of an opening, an opportunity, a gesture from someone in your world that carries more weight than its surface appearance might suggest. And what makes this kind of arrival significant is not just what it brings, it's what it represents, the tangible evidence that something you put into the world, some quality of care or effort or integrity that you may have stopped expecting to be noticed, was felt, and is now in some form finding its way back to you. An energy that may be present for many of you right now is the particular feeling of being seen in a way you didn't entirely expect. Because one of the more quietly painful aspects of moving through periods of effort and growth without obvious external recognition is the way it can gradually erode the sense that the effort is being registered at all, that anyone is paying attention, that the quality of what you bring to your work, your relationships, your daily acts of showing up, that it matters, or lands or leaves any kind of mark on the world around you. And a pattern worth noticing here is that the absence of visible recognition does not mean the absence of impact. Things land in people even when they don't say so. Generosity is remembered even when it isn't immediately acknowledged. Integrity creates impressions that persist long after the moment that produced them. And sometimes not always on the timeline we would choose, not always in the form we might have imagined, that impact returns. It shows up in the form of someone who has been quietly holding something they want to offer, someone who has been waiting perhaps for the right moment, or who has simply arrived at the point where they are ready to extend something that reflects what they have received or observed or understood about the person you are. And an energy appearing here suggests that one or more people in your life may be approaching exactly that kind of moment right now. And what makes this particular kind of arrival different from ordinary good news is the quality of what it carries beneath its surface. Because when something comes to you not from chance, but from the genuine recognition of another person From there, having seen something in you, registered something, decided that what they observed deserves to be honored with action, it lands differently. It doesn't just change circumstances, it changes something in the interior landscape. It confirms something about the relationship between who you are and what becomes possible for you. It says, in the most concrete and undeniable terms available, that your presence in the world has weight, that it creates impressions, that it matters to the people around you in ways that until now may not have been spoken but were nonetheless entirely real. This reflection invites you to consider what you have been offering to the world around you in your relationships, your work, your daily quality of presence that you may have stopped expecting to be recognized, and whether you can allow yourself to believe that it has been felt more deeply than the silence around it suggested. Here's the thing about receiving something significant. The capacity to receive well is its own skill, and it is one that many people significantly underestimate. There is a particular kind of person who gives generously, who shows up consistently, who brings genuine quality to what they do, and who then, when something good moves toward them in return, finds 1,000 quiet ways to deflect it, to minimize it, to insist it isn't as significant as it is, or that they don't quite deserve it, or that there must be some mistake or some catch that hasn't yet revealed itself. And this pattern, the deflection of good things by people who are genuinely good, is one of the more poignant emotional dynamics that sometimes surfaces in reflections like this one. Because there is something in the architecture of a person who has been through difficulty or who has spent significant time giving without receiving that can quietly recalibrate toward an expectation of scarcity, toward a baseline assumption that the good things are for other people, that abundance, when it appears, is probably either temporary or mistaken. And an energy that may be present here is a gentle but direct invitation to begin questioning that baseline, to notice when the reflexive deflection is operating, and to make consciously and deliberately a different choice, the choice to receive, to let something good be as good as it actually is, to allow the generosity moving toward you to land fully rather than bouncing off a surface that was trained to expect less. This reflection invites you to consider what your relationship with receiving actually looks like, whether you are as genuinely open to good things arriving as you believe yourself to be, or whether there is a quieter layer of resistance that tends to manage incoming abundance before it can fully take root. An energy that may be present in this moment is one of elevation, not the showy kind, the grounded, substantive kind that arrives when something in a person's circumstances shifts to reflect more accurately the quality of who they actually are and what they are actually capable of. And this kind of elevation, the real kind, tends to come not from luck or timing alone, but from the convergence of those things with a person who has done sufficient preparation to actually be able to hold what arrives, to use it well, to build from it rather than simply react to it. And a pattern worth noticing here is that many of you have been engaged in exactly that kind of preparation, not always in ways you recognized as preparation at the time, but in ways that are now creating the conditions for something significant to land and stay. There is something worth pausing on in that idea. The notion that the periods that felt least productive, the ones where nothing seemed to be happening, where the work was happening beneath the surface without visible result, where the growth was interior and unannounced, were often the most consequential, were often exactly the seasons in which the foundations were being laid for what becomes possible now. And a pattern that sometimes emerges in people who are approaching a genuine threshold of opportunity is the belated recognition of exactly that. The realization that the waiting wasn't wasted, that the quiet wasn't empty, that what felt like stagnation was actually consolidation, the gathering of something real before it could be offered anywhere. This reflection invites you to consider what the periods of quiet or apparent standstill in your recent experience may have been building in you that is only now beginning to make itself available, and whether you can reframe those stretches not as time lost but as ground gained. Um, Something worth naming here is the way that genuine good fortune, when it arrives, tends to feel almost quiet, almost ordinary, not because it isn't significant, but because the person who receives it has often been readying themselves for it in some interior sense for long enough that there is a feeling of rightness to it, a quality of recognition rather than shock. This is the version of a good thing arriving that says, yes, this is what the work was for. This is where the investment lands. And that feeling, however quietly it arrives, however undramatic its entrance, is worth pausing to honor when it comes. Worth allowing to be fully real rather than moving past it too quickly in pursuit of the next thing. A theme worth sitting with here is the relationship between what we have offered and what we receive, not in the narrow transactional sense, but in the broader, more accurate sense of the way a person's sustained quality of presence tends over time to shape their world. The person who consistently brings honesty to their relationships tends to attract honesty in return. The person who shows up with genuine care, genuine effort, genuine investment in the well-being of the people around them tends, eventually, to find themselves in a world that reflects some of that care back. Not immediately, not always in the form they expected, but in the patient, unhurried way that genuine reciprocity actually moves following its own internal logic, arriving when the conditions support its arrival. This reflection invites you to consider what the offer that may be approaching, in whatever form it takes, might be asking of you in return. Not in terms of obligation, but in terms of the quality of presence and engagement and authentic self that would allow you to receive it fully and build something real from it. And this is where it gets genuinely exciting, because a pattern that sometimes emerges when a person is at this particular threshold, when the gathering momentum of their own growth and integrity is beginning to translate into visible opportunity, is a sense of almost surprised gratitude. Not the performed kind, the real kind. The kind that surfaces when a person who has been doing good work in the relative quiet of not being specifically recognized suddenly finds evidence that the work was seen, was valued, is being responded to in a form that is actually tangible. And that experience of one's own effort being reflected back in the shape of something offered can be profoundly organizing. It confirms something that doubt had been quietly undermining. It restores a sense of cause and effect that difficulty sometimes erodes. It says, what you do matters, what you bring matters. The quality of who you are in the world creates consequences that ripple outward in ways you cannot always track, but that are nonetheless real. An energy appearing here is the suggestion that this confirmation may be approaching for you now, in the form of a gesture, an opportunity, an offer, something that arrives from someone in your world and carries beneath its surface content the deeper message that you have been seen, that what you have contributed has been registered, that the integrity and care and genuine quality you have brought to some dimension of your life has created an impression that is now seeking a way to honor itself through action. This reflection invites you to consider what it would mean to accept this, whatever it is, in whatever form it arrives, not with the usual qualifications or deflections or insistence that it isn't quite as significant as it appears, but with the full, grounded, unhurried openness of someone who has genuinely earned what is being offered and knows it. The closing energy of this reflection carries something that feels like the warmth of a hand extended in genuine goodwill. The image of a door opening, not because someone forced it, not because circumstances demanded it, but because someone on the other side chose to open it, chose to extend something, chose to make visible a regard or a recognition or a generosity that has been building quietly in the background of your connection with them. And that choice, whenever it arrives, in whatever form it takes, is worth receiving with the full, unguarded warmth it deserves. Because here is what is perhaps most important to understand about this particular moment in the arc of your life. The good that is moving toward you is not accidental. It is not arbitrary. It is not the result of luck operating independently of who you are and what you have done. It is, in the deepest sense, a reflection, a mirroring back from a world that has been quietly registering your presence of some essential quality of what you have been putting into it, and receiving it gracefully, opening to it fully, allowing it to be as real and as significant as it actually is perhaps the most fitting response available to you. Not because you owe the universe a performance of gratitude, but because you deserve to let something genuinely good land without immediately managing it into something smaller than it is. And managing it smaller is such a practiced thing for so many people. The way a significant gesture gets reframed as probably not that big a deal, the way an opportunity gets approached with so much caution that the enthusiasm required to actually seize it never quite arrives, the way a moment of genuine recognition gets deflected before it can do the one thing it was designed to do, which is to confirm something true about the person receiving it. That confirmation, the sense that the world has registered something real about you and is responding to it, is not a small thing. It is, for many people, one of the most nourishing experiences available. And an energy present here is the invitation to let yourself be nourished by it fully, without the usual disclaimers. You have been building something in the quiet, in the consistency of your showing up, in the integrity you brought to moments when no one was watching and the easier choice was available, in the care you extended even when you were tired or uncertain or not entirely sure it was landing anywhere. That building has not gone unnoticed. It was never invisible, however much the silence around it suggested otherwise. And what may be approaching now is simply the world catching up in some tangible, human, wonderfully specific form with a truth about you that has been present for longer than the recognition of it. Let it arrive. Let it be as big as it is. And let yourself completely and without apology receive it with the open hands and the unhurried heart of someone who has genuinely earned every last bit of what is being offered.